You're listening to the Femtrepreneur Show, and this is episode 30. In this episode, we're talking about how much of your launch content, like your emails and your sales pages and all that kind of stuff, you can reuse in your future relaunches. Hey guys, it's Mariah.
And I'm Megan.
And today's podcast is brought to you by our very own Launch Your Signature course student, Christina Nicholson. Christina is a former TV reporter and anchor, and being on air, she was pitched by business owners and PR professionals all the time. They all wanted media coverage because it's one of those really good ways to get to grow your business and get new customers, but all the pitches she got were usually terrible. So when she got out of the news industry, she entered the public relations industry, and through business development, she quickly learned that the people who needed media exposure couldn't usually afford to hire a PR firm, and they didn't really know what to do themselves. So that's why she created her course, Master Your PR. It's an online course that teaches solopreneurs and small business owners how to earn media exposure and grow their business. You guys can check out Christina's course at masteryourpr.com.
I love that we're having these student sponsors.
I know, me
It's
too.
so much fun.
I just really like highlighting them, and I'm proud of all of them, and I just think they're all amazing. So,
Me too. Well, so today, like you said, we are answering Monica's question. And her question was, when launching your signature course again and again, how much of your launch content can you reuse? I love this question.
such a good question. So when we were looking through all of our all of our submitted questions that you guys send us, this was a question that came up like 5 times. So I figured
multiple people asked variations
people
of it.
really wanted to know about this. And this is something I always wondered about. And I have to say, like, when I first started launching courses, I definitely overthought. I think I did what most people who are just starting out do, which is like overthinking the fact that you're using the same content more than once. Like, I'd be so freaked out that I was sending the same email from like 3 months ago, even though no one cares, no one remembers. But when I was first starting out, I was constantly on this like hamster wheel of writing brand new launch sequence every single time I launched, which at the time was every 2 months. So it was like crazy. And I quickly realized that not only was that not like necessary, but it's actually not helpful, because you want to actually incorporate like repetition and redundancy like into your launches, because it just helps you drive home your message more and more. And so sometimes people need to literally go through the exact same launch sequence or the exact same like launch experience multiple times in order to realize like, this is something that I'm ready to actually do. So we're going to talk about repurposing your launch content, go through sort of what we have today is a list of the assets that you created during your first launch. And these are all things that we teach you how to create in Launch Your Signature course. We talk about all of these things as assets, right? There's something that you create once, and then we expect you to use them again and again. And then there's a couple of like slight tweaks that you might want to make. So we'll talk about the tweaks that you might want to make. We'll talk about the assets and what they are. But for me, my general rule is you want to reuse at least 80% of your original launch in your relaunches. And you should always be reusing as much as humanly possible.
Well, and I think that's such a good thing to just lay out. I like numbers. So saying 80% feels like, okay, I can actually grasp what that means. But I think it's also probably higher than a lot of people would expect.
Yes.
Because like you said, as the person who's creating these assets and this content, you know every word you've ever written before.
Right.
And what you don't realize is that even your biggest fans probably haven't read every single email, and they haven't read every single tweet or every single Facebook post. So these are things that even your biggest fans might not notice, even if they're going through the same launch sequence multiple times. But I just love the idea of, from an efficiency standpoint too, like you don't have to start from scratch with every single relaunch.
Definitely.
Because that's like the wrong thing to do. So I'm excited.
Yeah. So basically you want to make sure that you're repurposing at least 80% of the stuff you've already created. And that 80% should be the stuff that really worked, right? So after every launch, I always encourage our students to take the time to do like a breakdown of what worked and what didn't. And you want to make sure that you reuse everything that worked well. The 20% that you're going to want to change or tweak is the stuff that you were like, man, that didn't really go over well. Like say, for example, you did a webinar and it didn't convert really well. Like no one bought live, or you didn't get a lot of sales in the follow-up, but you were making sales crazy while you were doing Facebook Live. So you might look back and say, you know what, my webinar didn't do that well, but my Facebook Lives were really profitable. And then you're going to tweak based on that information. So you always want to look back and make sure that you review all of your launches to help you plan your relaunches. You want to take inventory of everything that you already have. And like I said, we're going to go through a list of like what those assets usually are once you have launched your course the first time. But you want to take inventory and literally write down every single piece of content that you created for your course. This includes the course itself, but also everything else, like your freebies, your emails, your webinars, your social media posts, like everything that you created for those couple weeks around your launch. Write it all down so that you can look and say, wow, I created so much stuff and I'm going to be able to reuse like 90% of this, right?
Yeah, the physical list that you will write will, I think, surprise you because it's so like, you're like, wow, I created a lot of content during that launch.
I always say that you're creating 2 courses like worth of content. You're creating like the launches worth of content and then the actual course itself, and it ends up being like 2 entirely two entire courses.
Things, yeah.
At least if you're doing it like that way, if in the really big way, it can feel like that. So the other kind of tip I have for relaunching and how much you can really repurpose is just don't fix what isn't broken. So I think this is something that like Megan and I probably need to work on is like the don't fix what isn't broken, because we're always lucky that we're in a position to have the sort of like luxury of experimentation, in that like we've been successful. So we are kind of have the ability to like test something out that might not work. So we might have done something in a launch in the past that worked amazingly well, and we won't know if something else could work better unless we test it. And the truth is that it might flop. So we're always like at that risk of like, well, if we really want to push the boundaries and test new stuff and not just keep doing the exact same thing and see what else is possible, we have to take those risks. But that leads us to a lot of times sort of fixing what isn't broken and then realizing like, oh, this webinar we did a year ago worked really well. Well, I decided to redo the entire webinar and this one didn't do as well. So if you have something that's working well and it has a good conversion rate and people like your emails and like your sales page looks good, don't become that like over analyzing perfectionist that's just wants to like change things because you can. And I think it's hard for all of us to do that, but I just want to like encourage you guys to like not just try to like fix what isn't broken, and instead spend that energy scaling what worked really well for you. So if most of your sales came from your email sequence, how can you focus on getting more people opted into your lead magnet? If you made most of your sales, like I said, through like live streaming, how can you focus more on live streaming? What did you do that really worked, and focus your energy there? So I don't think everyone would recommend this, but the way that I operate is like not wasting time trying to improve on my weaknesses, but instead just really putting all of my energy into amplifying what worked really well. So if I suck at like, let's say I suck at Facebook ads, but like I'm really good at webinars or something, I'm not going to spend all my time and energy like trying to figure out Facebook ads if I could just really hone in on doing more and more webinars, and that's going to exponentially grow my business. Like, why would I spend all that time just working on something that I'm not good at,
Yeah, it's like really becoming an expert at what you're already good at. So it's like you could be mediocre at 10 things, or you could be phenomenal at 3 things. Exactly. And so it's kind of this learning process and this trial process as you first launch. You're going to try a few things and then go from there and learn and continue to hone in on a few strategies instead of all the strategies in the world.
Exactly. And like I said, the overall goal of what we want to convey to you is that you're going to repurpose. You're never starting from scratch with your relaunches. You're never sitting down and rewriting your email sequence from scratch. Like, there's just not really a case when you would do that unless you had like a terrible flop, in which case you would want to reassess. And usually we see that as an issue with like messaging. So one of the reasons that you might redo more of your launch content would be if your messaging had really, really changed over the course of like a couple of launches, or the brand of what you had done had really changed, or you had really pivoted. But if it's the same course and you feel good about that, then there's no reason to be like, I just need to start from scratch. So let's go through what the assets are that you've already created. And I'm just gonna briefly talk about like a quick tweak that you might make, but just know that, like I said, it's usually 80-20. Like, you're gonna end up reusing 80% of what you already have just as it is, and don't fix what isn't broken. So one of those assets is your freebie or your opt-in that is related to your course topic. The only real tweak you would make to that is like adding social proof or adding testimonials about the freebie to the opt-in page, because the last time you launched, you might have been launching this freebie the first time. Say it's a free email course, a 5-day email course. If you got really good feedback from it and you got like almost like testimonials from your free opt-in, you actually want to put those on the landing page, because it can help up your conversions on the landing page to have someone being like, oh my gosh, this was the best free course and I loved it.
Having any kind of social proof too, like even just screenshots of tweets you got or screenshots of Facebook posts, like to me, those are like the easiest way to get that. Like, it's so visual. I don't know.
Exactly.
I know when I'm looking at sales pages or landing pages that have like screenshots like that, I feel like it resonates with me more almost than like a headshot with a testimonial next to
real.
it. So
I know, I think someone told
real.
us that those like convert better in a statistical way as well, when it's like, oh, this is just like a post someone made on Facebook that's like saying something
even if it's
positive.
Just two things, like on a landing page, most of them don't have anything. So if then you suddenly add in two screenshots of tweets you got sent about how amazing it was, even just that doesn't have to be a ton. It'll make a big impact.
Exactly. The second asset obviously is the course itself.
Yeah,
so
a huge asset.
Yeah, the course that you've created is obviously an asset in and of itself. And really the only thing you might want to tweak is just like updating the content based on any feedback that you got, which is usually something that you might do once every 6 months or once a year. So not every time you launch, but make sure that if there was some sort of big omission, or a lot of people pointed out that they were confused about something, you want to make sure to update that. The third asset that you've created is your bonuses. So someone asked us, do I need to create and come up with like all new bonuses for every single launch? The answer is no. You can use the same bonuses again and again. And if you decide to like make them expiring bonuses, the way that we deal with this is just always remembering to take care of anyone who bought before. So if we do add a new bonus, anyone who already bought in the past, they automatically get that new bonus just added to their account for free. The only reason someone wouldn't get a bonus is if they bought after the time of it expiring. But anyone who bought during past launches, they always get anything new that we add to the course. We just want to always remember, just a basic policy is like, how can we make sure we're taking care of anyone who's bought already when we do add any bonuses. And a way to really strategically use bonuses is if you notice that the last launch, people kept asking about a certain topic and being like, is this covered in the course? Because this is what I'm really struggling with. And you found yourself like, oh, that's not really in the scope of the course itself. You could add a bonus because it helps overcome that objection. So if you do decide to add bonuses, which is not necessary, you might just decide to keep your bonuses the same. If you do, make sure that they're strategically like overcoming objections.
Yeah, I love that tip. And just as a clarifier, as we're going through these assets, we totally recognize that you may not have done every single one of these during your launch, but I do feel like most of them are pretty standard. Like, we're kind of going over standard parts of any launch, but in case you didn't have bonuses, I just wanted to touch that. You will still benefit from all the rest.
Definitely. I mean, my first launch didn't have any bonuses for sure. So this might be something that you work up to. But we definitely get a lot of questions about like, what do I do if I get, or do I need to add all new bonuses? And it's like, no, you'd go crazy if every 6 months or every 3 months you were like, oh, I have to come up with 5 new launch bonuses. Like, no, definitely not.
Okay. So the next asset would be emails.
Yes. So the next one is emails. You guys have already written an amazing launch sequence. This is one of your biggest assets. One thing you can do if you want to get really granular is like go through and analyze like your open rates on certain emails and your headlines and stuff like that, and be like, oh, this second email with this headline got the highest open rates out of any of them in the sequence. You can totally do that kind of stuff. But the main tweaks you're going to want to make is just like making sure that the links and the dates that are mentioned in the emails are up to date. I usually use the exact same email sequence. And it's like I said, I think when people are starting out, they're really nervous about sending the same email like twice in 6 months. But I use the exact same email sequence every single time. And if anything, people are like, oh, I love this email. Like, I love getting these. And they're like excited to like get those same emails again because they kind of like forgot about them. And then they're like, oh man, I love this story. Like, this is so good.
And I think to touch on what you said earlier, in my memory, the only time you've ever really started almost from zero with the launch sequence during a relaunch was when we changed our messaging. Exactly. And even then, I feel like you didn't really start from zero. Yeah. But that was in my memory, that was the only time we've done a major overhaul of a launch sequence was when we just like refined who we were targeting and how we were helping them. And
it was also kind of the catalyst for it was that I was writing an email sequence for affiliates. So I'd never written a launch sequence that was different for affiliates, and writing the launch sequence for affiliates actually made me realize that I wanted to change the messaging of our audience facing emails. Like, I was writing a launch sequence from someone else's perspective, like talking about like, oh, Mariah does this and that. And it was the way I was simplifying everything because I was forced to write it from someone else's like outside perspective, made me realize that I could really simplify our messaging too. That's kind of why that happened. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And as with all of these things, add new testimonials and case studies that you've gotten since the last launch. So in those emails, you might want to add like new testimonials or new case studies, or like just mention like new students that you've had since then.
Especially if this is a relaunch and the first time you wrote these, you may not have had testimonials actually for this program. So especially when you do your first relaunch, you probably want to take any of those testimonials and case studies that you had and like make sure these are from the program, and you can get more specific and have like more not realistic, but better testimonials.
Yeah. I mean, it gives you, the more testimonials you have, the more you can use each testimonial to like address a specific question that people have. Like if everyone's asking you like, well, I'm really concerned about how much not having enough time, and you have a testimonial that's like, I couldn't believe how fast it was, then you would like use testimonials in certain spots to like overcome objections, like we keep saying. Okay, so the next asset is that the last time you launched, you made a bunch of social media posts. You were posting on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and you had all these things going out all the time. You can reuse all of those. So it's a really good idea to keep a spreadsheet of that type of social media content. Those shorter posts, whether it's captions for Instagram or just tweets, you can totally just like resend those out again and make sure that you're mixing them into whatever your scheduled social media posts are for this round.
Yeah.
And the same thing so one of the things we teach in Launch Your Signature course is how to do a social media series leading up to your launch, because this is something that I actually had never seen anyone else do until we started doing it. And now like everyone does it. But at the time, I hadn't seen anyone doing like a 30-day like live stream series that was just free, teaching every single day leading up to the actual opening of the cart for your course. And now people are doing like challenges, and there's definitely a lot of different like versions of this, but basically it's just like I had done it originally for 30 days. Now we do it for 10 days, and I just live stream for 10 days and I just share 10 quick tips about the topic, and it gets people really excited and really connected. You want to run that live stream series live again. So whether it's Facebook Live or Periscope or whatever it is that you use, or Instagram stories or whatever, you want to make sure that you're doing it live, but you can use the exact same notes and the exact same content that you used the first time. So I've been using the same 10 tips for the last 3 launches, and I'll keep using those same tips, but every time that I do it live again, it's a little bit different. People are asking different questions, and I maybe have something new to say about that topic, but it definitely is fine to like use the same 10 tips every time.
Yeah. And people love that.
Definitely.
I love the social media series.
Me too. It's honestly, I think it's one of the best and biggest things you can do for your launch. Like adding that, something that I don't think about a lot, but it's something that, like I said, like looking back, not really a lot of people had done that before. I was like, oh, let's do this thing where for 30 days I'll do an hour-long class.
I remember crazy. At the end of that 30 days, you were like, okay, 30 days was too long.
Yeah. I was like,
remind me not to do 30 days.
I don't think I'd ever committed to doing a live hour-long class every single day.
It's a lot.
Like, I don't even know. That really tested the limits of like, can you stick to something?
And I was back on Periscope.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, anyways, I feel like I could have a whole podcast talking about social media series.
Well, we should. Let's write that down. Coming soon.
Okay. Getting my pen and paper right now.
Coming soon. Now, the next asset is your testimonials. These are your biggest asset. Besides your course itself, the testimonials are your most important asset. I mean, your students are everything.
We've already brought it up in like every single asset.
Like they're really everything. And so you want to make sure that you're following up with testimonials that you've already gotten and like checking in with those successful students and kind of seeing like, where are you now? Like what has happened since the last time or whatever. And then you can kind of grow as you do more and more relaunches, you might want to start doing video testimonials, which like I didn't do the first launch and I didn't ask for after the first launch. I just wasn't really sure like how to gather them and what to do with them. But now that we have more systems in place, it's like, okay, we can ask for people to submit video testimonials or case studies. We have more systems around that and it's easier to stay organized. But just remember that your biggest asset is your testimonials. And you want to make sure that you're like collecting them and organizing them and keeping track of everything. Another asset that you've created is your sales page. So while there are definitely some things on your sales page you're going to want to update, you do not have to rebuild it from scratch every single time. This is another specific question related to this that someone said, every time I launch, do I need to create a brand new sales page? No. The thing is that if you do that, you're never going to know like what actually works, because if you're changing too many variables, it's like a science experiment. If you change too many variables in any one launch, if it's really good or if it's really bad, you're really not going to know what part failed because you changed everything. So we only like to add or tweak a couple of things each launch so that we can actually accurately test what's working and what's not. Otherwise, it'll be like, well, we changed 80% of everything. So if it went really well, we have no idea why. Yeah. So I do think like your sales page is a great asset that you already have.
Yeah, and the things you just update are just accuracy. Like, has the pricing changed? Like any countdown timers, any bonuses? It's really just updating little text pieces here and there just to make sure.
Like logistics stuff.
Yeah, but you shouldn't need to necessarily do a whole new sales page copy and design every time.
Right. Yeah, definitely. The other thing is that like you already have like your pricing, you have your pricing already. You can increase your price every time you launch, or you can choose to keep it the same. And what we find is that the first couple of launches you do, you're going to want to raise your prices until you kind of settle on what you feel like is a great final price. Like you have an optimum price. And I feel like for all of us, we don't start out super confident. And we might undercharge the first couple launches. And then we kind of slowly work up to what our like final price is going to be. So that's something you might end up changing. And the last thing that people did ask us about is, the first time you launch, if you're in Launch Signature course, we want you to do a pre-sale because we don't want you to spend 2 months creating a huge course that no one buys. So you're not going to do a pre-sale in your relaunches, obviously, because it's already created. So instead, that turns into this sort of like pre-launch hype phase where you're promoting things like, you can actually watch what we're doing right now as Megan and I are recording this. We're in this pre-launch sort of like activity phase where we're just getting people excited about the cart opening. We're not doing a pre-sale anymore because the course has already launched multiple times, but we're doing things like a giveaway. We're going to do our social media series. We're going to do a scholarship. So it's just like fun stuff that's like leading up to the course.
Yeah. And at the beginning, we'll do like an early bird instead of what would have been a pre-sale, where people who are ready to act can, get it at a lower price than it is publicly available.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Did I like butcher what an early bird is?
No, you totally made sense.
Okay. But I think so, like when you do your first launch, if you do what we advise, you'll do that pre-sale, and you don't do a pre-sale for the relaunch. So that would be obviously something you wouldn't reuse, is that pre-sale content.
It's one of those changes for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that was everything. And in case, I hope this was helpful for everything. For everything. We actually have a relaunching content cheat sheet. So those assets we just went through verbally with y'all, we actually have a table that Mariah has made that goes through each of these assets and pretty much covers some of the tweaks that we just talked about next to each one. So it's a great resource for you to go ahead and print out, even if you're just doing your first launch now. It'll be super helpful when you are doing your relaunches in the future. So be sure to go to thefemshow.com/30 for the show notes to this episode and to find the links to all the resources we mentioned, including that relaunching content cheat sheet. And if you want to discuss this episode with us in our community of awesome course creators, make sure to join our free Facebook group at thefemshow.com/community.
And if you like this episode, please subscribe to the Femtrepreneur Show on iTunes and leave a rating and a review. I feel like I just kind of misspoke, Femtrepreneur.
You did?
I like a Femtrepreneur. If you're watching this on YouTube, then please leave a comment right below with your thoughts and hit the like button and subscribe. We love to hear from you guys in the comments. If you have a question for us, just like Monica's question today, submit your questions at thefemshow.com so we can give you a shout out and answer it live on the show.
Okay, before you stop recording.
Yes, we forgot.
We need to clap on 3. 1, 2, 3.